Shalom, Yahweh Hashem Yahweh Shai Barakathum to all my brothers, Yahweh Shema, Alatha Bahashim Yahweh Shai to all my sisters. We're the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Started out of 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York. We've been teaching so-called Negroes and so-called Hispanics and so-called Native Indians that they're the Lord's chosen people according to the Bible. We've been teaching this truth since 1969 under Commander General Yohana. And today's our history class. History. You gotta love history, man. History will tell you a lot about your oppressor. It'll tell you a lot about your demise in America and how we've become fools in this place. We've become like little children that leech on to anything that sounds good, that tastes good. And because we've continued to follow and seek our oppressor's peace and his wealth, because we've continued to follow his lustful nature, we're destroyed in this place. And for those that disagree, there's something inside of you that needs to be audited. You know what I mean? Because it takes a brother to die by the hands of a devil with a knee on his neck for our people to get an insight that there's something terribly wrong in this place. There's something that is terribly off, right? And what I don't get is that, you know, the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, we got classes every day, right? We was out in them corners every weekend, every Saturday, letting you know and giving you the clues that you need to put this puzzle together. But in spite of our efforts, we still have to go back to the drawing board and analyze who our enemy is. There's something terribly disturbing about that. You know, when you got brothers that are giving up their weekends, giving up that Saturday where they could be spending time with their families. They could be spending time with their loved ones. They could be going to the mall and shopping just like you. But they're out there letting you know that the Lord is going to destroy America. America is spiritually Egypt. It's spiritually Sodom and Gomorrah. And the Lord is going to destroy it with plagues. Letting you know every weekend who our enemy is. And that we need to be cautious of our enemy. And the devices that he uses to trap us. To make us fall into a snare, right? So now why is history class important? History class is very important because what it does is it shows that history repeats itself, especially in this country. A lot of people think that, you know, Juneteenth passed what, this past weekend or the weekend before, and everybody felt a sense of pride for Juneteenth. Every black man and woman felt a sense of pride, like we've accomplished something. We've never accomplished anything in this place. And we have to really analyze our condition in this place. And we have to understand that nothing has changed, right? You can't take something that's crooked and make it straight. It's damn near impossible. Even through proper machinery, there's something that's still going to be a little off. Still going to be a little offset. It ain't going to be quite the same as when it was first manufactured. And our enemies, our oppressor, is something that cannot be straight. He cannot go straight. You know, they used to say in movies, right? They used to say, behind every good crime is a white man, right? Well, there's something real true about that, right? When you think about the crack epidemic that destroyed generations of families through kingpins like Ronald Reagan and Nancy Reagan, what you have to understand is that was one of the biggest crimes committed in American history. You know what I mean? Where the CIA and our American government leveled black communities, Hispanic communities. Now let's fast forward to 2020. 2020, what is happening right now, right? We got 4th of July coming up, and that's something that we want to, that's what we're going to talk about today. Our Oppressors Independence Day, right? That's what we're going to talk about today. And we'll talk about, we'll talk about certain things that can be symbolic to a black man that considers himself to be a patriot or considers himself to be an American. There's something very powerful about a black man labeling himself as an American. There's something very powerful and very disturbing at the same time. And what we got to understand is that these labels that we put upon ourselves and labels that have been put upon us is drawing us further and further away from the Most High. It's drawing us further and further away from our true culture, from finding out our true culture and identity. And our oppressor, he knows this. He knows that black people are looking for a belonging. He knows black people are looking to be adopted into a family. Why not consider the Lord? Why not consider what he's put together? You know, the blueprint that he put together. Why not consider that? Because the Lord wants to adopt you back into the fold. He wants to adopt you into the family, a royal family at that. But many are amazed with the fireworks. Many are amazed with the allure of our oppressor's holidays. His holidays have nothing to do with our holidays. Our holidays or our holy days are found in Leviticus 23. So now we'll talk about the witchcraft of fireworks, right? I think my mic is too loud. Oh no, maybe I'm too close. Let me bring this back a little bit. We'll talk about the allure that we find in fireworks and why we're so excited that our oppressor found his independence. And he gave us he put us under the spell of that, we've had our Independence Day with Juneteenth, and that's a goddamn lie. Juneteenth wasn't our Independence Day, right? In order for us to get our independence, we have to completely and utterly separate from our oppressor, right? Do you think a Jewish man, right, a so-called Jewish man, and a German that was a German from the Nuremberg trials, a German who was a part of his family's or his people's destruction, do you think they're having drinks together? Do you think they're out in a bar somewhere having drinks and co-mingling with their oppressor? In World War II, at the end of the war, the so-called Jewish man went to the United Nations and made the petition to separate completely from his enemies, right? Why would he do that? Because he knows as long as he's under the people that has oppressed him, he'll always be a second-class citizen. Another thing we'll talk about is the U.S. Constitution. how when the U.S. Constitution was written, it wasn't written on it wasn't written and copulated for the slaves and the slave master. It was specifically for the slave master, right? In the eyes of our oppressor, and for those that have written the U.S. Constitution and the amendments, understand that these people were slave owners, right? Understand, in 1776, our label was on the level of subhuman, right? More like livestock, more like cattle, right? If you owned a farm, right? I'll give you an example. If America sends out a census every year, right? Every year America sends out this census, and they want every household to fill out that census. What if I was to fill out that census, right? And what if I was to include my animals in that census? America, the U.S. Census would have looked at it and said, "We don't allow you to put your cows as a family member. You know what I mean? Or your pigs or your chicken." Meaning this, in 1776, we were considered subhuman. We were considered livestock. We weren't considered a people. So anything that was written that pertained to laws, to statutes of of this nation, of a young nation at that, with 13 colonies, that did not pertain to us. We were considered product. We weren't, in 1776, as they were bombarding the fireworks and they were celebratory for their independence against their oppressor, we still had an issue. We still had a problem as black people. We were still trying to get our independence from the same people that fought for their independence. See how hypocritical this can get? You know what I mean? But I digress. Let's get to let's pull up a scripture real quick. Let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 6. Actually, let's start at let's start at Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse. Let's start at verse 1. It says this: when the Lord thy God shall Slaki. Let's bring it back. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 1. It says, when the Lord thy power shall bring thee into the land whither thou goest to possess it, and hast cast out many nations before these. And he's going to name the nations. Pay attention. The Hittites, and the Girgashites, and the Amorites, and the Canaanites, and the Perizzites, and the Hivites, and the Jebusites. 7 nations greater and mightier than now. Now, the reason why the Lord wanted to cast out these nations is because these nations, number one, they were more powerful than our nation. But our biggest problem is that as we mingle and as we cohabitate with these other nations, we start to pick up, we start to accentuate to their culture, and we start to take on their identity. And so the Lord wanted to get them other nations out of there as we was coming out the wilderness. Understand, Joshua led a campaign. Moses led a war campaign. And we had to, the Lord wasn't just going to give us the land and just say, hey, just walk in here. But we had to fight to get these heathens out of the land that the Lord gave us. Right? Verse 2. And when the Lord thy God shall deliver them before thee, and thou shalt smite them. And remember this, right? For all you that was so celebratory for Juneteenth, understand it's always the Most High that delivers us from our enemies. You know what I mean? He's the one that's going to win our wars. We really have to pay attention to the book of Exodus. We got to pay attention to how the Lord stretched out his arm to a people that were drowning. He reached out his arms to a people that were drowning. In America today, we are drowning. Right? We are subjugated to violence. We are subjugated to poverty. We are subjugated to destruction in this place because we've strayed from our power. We've strayed from the Most High. It says this, thou shalt smite them and utterly destroy them. Thou shalt not make no covenant with them. And now the reason why I wanted to bring this part out where it says, thou shalt not make no covenant with them. On the 4th of July, when you're setting up that barbecue and you're calling your family and your white friends and your peoples to come through, you're cleaning up the backyard. You're going through this whole ritual of preparation for the 4th of July. What you're agreeing to is that you're agreeing to that cop that put the knee on the neck of George Floyd. You're agreeing to that. You're agreeing to white supremacy. You're agreeing to every harm that has been committed towards black people. You're agreeing to that. You're agreeing to police brutality. You're agreeing to our oppressors' racism towards us. Right? You're agreeing to every evil thing that our oppressor does. You know why? It's because you've made a covenant with your oppressor. That's why it says, that's why the Lord said this, thou shalt not make a covenant with them. We are never to make a covenant with them. Right? And he'll explain how and how you can make a covenant with your oppressor. If you out there marching, no justice, no peace, and you out there, protesting against the injustice of black people, but then you turn around and go and celebrate the independence of your oppressor, while at the same turn you was still under slavitude, still under servitude under your oppressor, still a slave under him. You agree with every injustice that's happened to black people. You agree with every crime that's committed with black people and Hispanic people and so-called Native Indian people. You agree with that because you have made a covenant with your oppressor. Right? Let's keep reading. Nor show mercy onto them. And this is what we do. It's sad in 2020, when you think about, let's go back, when you think about Dylan Roof when he walked into that church in Charleston, South Carolina, and killed those 9 black parishioners. We've extended mercy onto Dylan Roof. And this is a Christian concept that shows a level of weakness in the spirit, where our oppressor consistently commits acts of violence towards us, and we always want to show him mercy. We want to hug him. We want to brush her hair. You know what I mean? This is our demise in this place. And we really have to wake up and understand that this is something that no matter what you're doing right now, and no matter what kind of movement you're in right now, I guarantee, I'm letting you know right now that this Saturday, as you partake in the festivities of 4th of July, everything you've done with the movements that you've been a part of, with the protesting, with the fighting for black injustice, it is in vain. It's null and void. Because you've made a covenant with your oppressor. As your oppressor's killing you, and he's choking you out. You have made a covenant with him. In this sense, you're willing to celebrate his independence. That's a scary thought, right? That's a scary thought to know that all that he's done historically to your people, how he's raped and robbed and murdered your people, and he continues to murder your people, continues to kill you in these streets. But on the 4th of July, we gotta let that go today. You gotta pull up. You start to sound like what's his name? T.I. talking about after the 4th of July, we'll do such and such. Nah, we gotta cut off their holidays. We gotta completely separate ourselves from this place, and we're gonna get into it. Let's keep reading. Neither shall thou make marriages with them. And let me tell you something, right? I know you got Billy at work. Billy is, Billy is so nice at work, right? How can he be the devil that the Bible speaks of, right? Billy at my job is so nice, so courteous, right? Now here's your problem, right? There's something about you that shows lack of integrity and honor when you are friends with your oppressor, right? Meaning, you're friends with the same people that have utterly destroyed the spirit out of your people, that have utterly, physically harmed your people time and time again. Physically, in 2020, you're starting to see so many videos of people, of our oppressor, calling us niggas, our oppressor, blatantly showing his racism, blatantly putting on that Donald Trump spirit. And in 2020, you have your friends on your friends list in Facebook. I'm going to see a Becky on your timeline, on your friends list. There's something very disturbing about that. You know what I mean? The fact that, when we out in the workplace, or when we go into a business that is not of our people, understand that that's a business arrangement, right? To have a business arrangement with your oppressor, there's no sin in that. But to consider your oppressor as your friend, there's something there's a psychological damage going on in your mind. There is, right? To think that your oppressor is genuine about your cause, as you see our oppressors out there with the protesting. And, I was driving around, the slave that I do, I drive around the most. I mean, listen, I've explored the white man's kingdom in this place, right? And I see how they live. I'm dropping off, items to particular, very, very extravagant mansions and neighborhoods where you won't see a black man, at least the next black man you'll see is going to be at least 5 towns over, right? And as I'm driving through their kingdom and I'm making deliveries, what I've come to understand is that I see a lot of Black Lives Matter signs on their property, right? As I'm looking at all these signs of Black Lives Matter on our oppressors' properties in these very prestigious places, what I realized is that as they can put that sign up there, in their spirit, they know that separation is the key to their domination. Separation. See, our oppressors, right, in these other nations have considered the law of separatism, meaning abiding with your own and taking care of your own. Meanwhile, what do? We want to join. We want to join those that seek to that seek to do harm onto us. Does that make sense? Does a gazelle just walk into a pride of lions and just says, "Hey, no justice, no peace"? No, a gazelle does not do that. A gazelle understands that lion is a predator, and when they are in the midst, we should head out of Dodge. A gazelle understands that, but you, black man, it's 2020. The good ship Jesus landed on Plymouth Rock in the 1600s, and in 2020, we feel that you feel that you can have white friends, and it's absolutely disturbing to think that you can have that and still maintain a level of integrity. Where is your integrity, black man? Black men are tagging up white women, right, at an alarming rate. Where is your integrity, black man? You know she's going to call you a nigger one day. You know she's going to tell you that she should have never messed with you. You know it's coming, right? Let me use a white term. I hate to burst your bubbles. But that day's coming where that white woman that you laying with, that you think is better than the black woman, understand that day's coming where she's going to show you what side she's on. It's coming, black man. It's coming, Hispanic man. White women love Hispanic men too. Ooh-wee. White women love Hispanic men. Right? White women want their babies to have curly hair and melanin. You know what I mean? There's things that our oppressor truly hates about us, right? He hates the fact that we have melatonin skin, and he hates the fact that that our features is something that can be quite desirable. That's why they're in them tanning booths. You know what I mean? Every week, right? All right, so now let's we got about 10 minutes before I really get cracking on this. If there's any questions online, ask your questions. I don't think there's anyone online right now, but if you do get online, ask your questions before we get down on this history of 4th of July. Wow. To think that we don't even consider that what we're doing is shameless. We don't even consider that what we're doing is so shameless, right? But most of us just kind of want to follow the crowd, right? Most of us are just too scared to stand up. Even those that know that celebrating 4th of July is wrong, those people are too weak to stand up and maintain their honor. And it's a sad thing, man. But let's keep reading on the scripture real quick. Neither shalt thou make marriages with them. Thy daughter shalt thou not give unto his son, nor his daughter shalt thou take unto thy son. So here's what you got to understand, is that the Lord destroyed the planet the first time by means of water because of interracial marriage. The Lord is completely against interracial marriage when it comes to our people. He does not want us mingling and making a covenant with our oppressor. Right? He is completely against that. And he's saying this right here. Right? Verse 4. For they will turn away thy son from following me. And this is the reason why the Lord is against interracial marriage. Because if you go and marry a Chinese woman, there's a likelihood that your children are going to worship Buddha or Tao Ming or whatever Chinese idol that they have out there. There's a chance, if you go and sleep with Becky, that your children are going to worship white Jesus. You know what I mean? And there's a reason why the Lord wanted us to drive out these nations out of the land that he gave us. There's a reason why he did not want us to give our sons unto their daughters, or their daughters unto our sons. There's a reason, and he explains it in verse 4. Deuteronomy chapter 7, verse 4. Salaki. Let me just get back over here. For they will turn away thy son from following me. The Lord is a jealous God. He wants all your children to follow him. But here's what you're doing, right? You know what your children are doing right now in 2020 for 4th of July and weeks prior to 4th of July? They're lighting up fireworks, right? Which is the worship of devils, which is the worship of Satan. And we'll get into the history of that as well, right? Which is witchcraft. You know what I mean? So will the anger of the Lord be kindled against you and destroy thee suddenly. Now understand, the Lord is angry with us. He's angry with us because we've decided to take our sons and give them on to their daughters. We've decided to join these other nations, right? And to make marriages with them. And the Lord is angry. The anger of the Lord is kindled against us. And he will destroy thee suddenly. That's how serious the Lord is about this. He's so serious about it that he will destroy thee suddenly. Here's what the Lord is trying to do in a nutshell, right? The Lord is trying to protect you from your dumb, stupid, simple self. That's what the Lord is trying to do. He's trying to protect you from yourself, because the decisions that you're making is you're basically walking into a trap. You're walking into a snare. Right? I got a couple brothers in the world who've had children with white women. And their parents are completely, our oppressors' parents are completely against that. And they won't outrightly just come out with that. But they'll wait for that brother to mess up and for that white woman to kick him to the curb to express how they really feel about this nigga. Right? And so understand that there's something that, you basically go down a spiritual decline when you join your oppressor, when you marry your oppressor. Right? Verse 5. But thus shall you deal with them. Ye shall destroy their altars. Let me tell you something, right? You setting up that barbecue and that grill is setting up an altar to sacrifice onto idols. Now, these idols, they're not real, right? But you setting up that table during Thanksgiving and Christmas for that honey turkey ham, that turkey, right? You setting up that barbecue for 4th of July and setting up the grill and every other holiday that is a worship of idols. What you're basically doing, right, is that you're worshiping the God of your slave master. And that's what you're doing, right? When the Lord said you shall destroy their altars and break down their images and cut down their groves and burn their graven images with fire. You should not be involved in anything outside of what the Lord has purposed you to do. And you'll find this in Leviticus 23. This is where you'll find what the Lord would have you to do, right? Now let's get to the key part. It says, verse 6, Deuteronomy 7 and 6, for thou art a holy people. And the word holy means separateness. We're the kind of people that have always been and should be separate from everybody else, right? We should not be entangling ourselves with the affairs of our oppressor and his holidays, right? We should not entangle ourselves with the affairs of our oppressor and his philosophies, right? This is something that is very important to understand, because it says, for thou art a holy people unto the Lord thy power. And that's what we should be. We should be a holy people, a people that are separate, that, when the Passover comes around, there is no heathens in the midst of our celebration. And the Passover is our celebration of the Lord destroying our enemies. Just like the 4th of July is the celebration of our oppressor destroying and defeating his enemies. The only difference between the Passover and the 4th of July is that we did not have to lift a finger. And understand this. If you have ears to understand this. Understand that we don't have to lift a finger today Juneteenth was not our Freedom Day, right? But the 4th of July, that was our oppressor's Freedom Day, where he fought for his freedom, right? Juneteenth was not our Freedom Day. Juneteenth, what it did was it gave us a temporary relief, which walked us into a whole nother kind of hell. Right? The state that we're we are under a systematic oppressive regime, right, that understands what Pharaoh understood. Pharaoh said, these people be idle. Let's give them more work. When Juneteenth rolled around and the Emancipation of Proclamation, right? It really was something that was unsettling, because as we were considered free, we still went back into that same servitude, and life got even harder because the people that we were seeking help from and providing for us was making sure, with the animosity that was in their heart, they were making sure that life was even more torturous. Which is when you have vigilantes like the KKK that were, and the Jim Crow laws that were lynching and robbing and killing any black man in sight, leveling black societies and neighborhoods. Our oppressor felt a certain kind of way for even thinking about freedom. You know what I mean? He felt a certain kind of way for us even thinking about freedom. So we really have to consider what kind of man he is. Right? We have to consider how he taught his children and his children's children what his parents taught him. And what they teach, our oppressor teaches his children, is that we are his enemy. Now, why are we not teaching our children that our oppressor is our enemy? You know why? It's because of our black leaders. It's because of the Christian church. That's why we're not teaching our children that our oppressor is the devil that the Bible speaks of. When you really wake up to that notion that our oppressor is the devil that the Bible speaks of, what you'll start to understand is that it's like a veil that's taken off. Right? Now, as you navigate in this place, you'll know what to look for. You'll know where the traps are. Right? But let's get into it. It's 8 o'clock. All right, so our oppressor's Independence Day, right? Actually, let's finish Deuteronomy 7 and 6 before we get there, right? It says, "The Lord thy God had chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth." Do you really think, right, if the tables were flipped and we were on the upper end of society, upper echelon of society, and we were first-class citizens, and our oppressor was under our servitude, right? And let's say we had someone else oppressing us, and we fought for our independence. Do you really think the so-called white man would celebrate our independence? You lost your mind. I would say you're crazy if you really think that he would celebrate our independence. It would never happen. And until this day, it doesn't happen, right? Which is why you see a lot of these devils saying white lives matter too, because they don't want to have any compassion towards your historical oppression, your historical defeat. They don't want to consider that. They don't want to bring it to remembrance. That's why they always tell you, "Oh, that was in the past." No, the past is reflectant on what's going on right now. Right? We're trying to close this chapter, and the only way we can close this chapter is by getting rid of you, getting rid of these devils. And when I say getting rid of, what I'm saying is, in Deuteronomy 7:6, it says, "For thou art a holy people." We have to learn how to be a holy people. We have to learn how to be separate. I can guarantee you, if we all decided as black men, Hispanic men, and Native Indian men, that we are not going to partake at the sacrifices of your altar, with the sacrifices at your altar. We are not going to partake in your holidays. I can guarantee you that the Lord will make something so amazing happen in Israel. I can guarantee you that our oppressor will look to seek our attendance. He will do whatever it takes to get us fully involved in his holidays. And when he starts to see us separate from his institutionalized methods of brainwashing, when he starts to see that we're waking up and that we're coming back to our own and celebrating our own thing, he is really going to, this economy, it will, I guarantee you, this economy will crumble. America would be destroyed overnight. He needs us to be celebratory towards his Independence Day. When he looks at his slaves being just as happy as he is for what his forefathers have done, he feels good. He's like, he feels good, right? He almost wants to rub you on your head and say, "Good puppy, good dog." That's kind of what he wants to do when he sees you slapping that pork rib on that grill and showing your allegiance and verbally and physically showing your covenant with him. That's what you're doing. Let's keep reading. The Lord thy God had chosen thee to be a special people unto himself, above all people that are upon the face of the earth. Right? He chose us to be a special people unto himself. But what are we doing in 2020? We don't want to separate. We want to join. We want to join in their festivities. Are you lost your mind? When we should be joined together. When we should gather ourselves together. Right? All right, but let's go. Let's get it. All right, so our Oppressors Independence Day, right? There's a lot of facts and myths about July 4th, 1776, right? The Declaration of Independence was adopted by the 13 colonies in America, right? But let's read what Thomas Jefferson wrote. Thomas Jefferson wrote the following. He said this: And feel free to interrupt if you have any questions. This is what Thomas Jefferson said. Thomas just wrote the following. He said, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal." Now understand, this devil, Thomas Jefferson, said that all men are created equal, right? When he wrote this decree, right? That they are endowed by their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now, this is something that if black people scrutinized and understood when this was written, it's understood that when it says all men, it's talking about all white men. That's what it's talking about, right? Why would you consider a slave when you said all men? That means you would have had to been an abolitionist, someone that was looking to abolish slavery. Thomas Jefferson was not looking to abolish slavery. I kind of want to pull up some stuff on Thomas Jefferson real quick. Can I? I don't even know if I have time, but Thomas Jefferson, let me just pull something up real quick. So, the same person that said that all men are equal, right? And he also said, Salak, let me pull it. He also said that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, right? So all men are created equal. How is it that a slave master can say that all men are created equal? And after writing this declarance, continue to go back to his plantations and whip slaves and put them under the most inhumane conditions, right? This is why this is a joke, right? All this is a visage, right? Our oppressor knows. The thing about our oppressor is that he's very cunning with his words, right? He can write a declaration, he can write an amendment that is so cunning that 400 years later we look at it and we don't see anything wrong with the text, right? We read all men are created equal, and we can't equate that when he was talking about this, he was talking about all free men, meaning all white men are created equal, right? Because he definitely wasn't talking about the slaves, because he was a slave owner. And that would be very hypocritical for him to be talking about the slaves, right? But that's Thomas Jefferson for you, right? Let's keep going. So, right? And keep in mind, Thomas Jefferson owned over 200 slaves, right? He was also believed, and he was known, historians won't tell you this, your public school won't tell you this, but he was known for raping his slave. One of the slaves that he used to rape and had kids with, I believe her name was Sally Hemings. She was one of the slaves that he raped or had kids with, whatever the story may entail, right? So as he authored this famous document that all men are created equal, he went back into his plantation and he had two families, one African American family, so-called African, and the other white. He had children with slaves that were still under his rulership, right? Let me tell you something, right? The decision of the 13 colonies to rebel against King George III. This is what's going on. It was a rebellion against King George III, right? France played a big part in the American Revolution, right? They played a big part in that, right? And then, but at the same time, the French, you got to remember that French went to war with the Indians as well, right? Because how the colonies were split up. We had the 13 colonies, but when you went to the South was dominated by the French, right? This place, North America, was under the rulership of the French, the Americans, and the British, right? And King George was in rulership at the time during the American Revolution. But what do I really want to get into? Here's what I want to get into, right? A week before we had Juneteenth, and I don't know about you, but there was nothing symbolic about Juneteenth, right? Then what's symbolic about 4th of July? How do I know that a brother or a sister got the mark of the beast? How do I know that you've made a covenant with your enemy, despite your protesting, despite your Black Lives Matter stance? How do I know that everything that you've done in your fight for black people is in vain? Is when 4th of July comes around, I will know who the traitors are. And I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be very stern with this. I will know who the traitors are. Why do I say traitor? If you're a black or Hispanic man, and you consider yourself to be American, and you are staunch on having American pride and patriotism, you're a traitor. You're a traitor if on the 4th of July I catch you with red, white, and blue and stars on your outfit. I know that you are in the spirit of 4th of July. I know. I will know, right? If you go to a barbecue on the 4th of July and say, well, I'm not here for that, but I'm here for such and such, you're a traitor. You're a man that needs to know what it is to be a man with integrity. You're dishonorable because the 4th of July is another promotion of white supremacy. Why do I say that? Even though our oppressor has fought his enemies off for his independence, he still would not consider the fact that as he was so-called being oppressed, he in turn was oppressing, right? So the whole 4th of July thing is something that is vain. It's something that is, if we can understand how lucrative it is, if we don't celebrate 4th of July, we'll understand how a free man thinks. The thing about a slave, right, is that a slave has to be meek. The one thing a slave cannot be is that he cannot be bold. And if you're not in the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, what I will tell you right now is that you are still a slave. Because Christ is the one that teaches us boldness. There's something heavy about being bold. And this is what it's all about. A slave can never be bold. A slave has to be meek. Right? But let's keep going. Now, the U.S. flag, right? The United States flag is most definitely a symbol of oppression and terrorism against black people. Just like the Confederate flag. The same way you want to take down the Confederate flags and you are fighting to get to get the Confederate flag out the picture, you should do the same with the American flag, because the American flag represents oppression and terrorism, right? And despite popular belief, the flag was probably sewn by a slave, but they'll give a credit to a white woman, right? Those original 13 colonies stood under the premise of white supremacy, right? The Declaration of Independence and the amendments that came along were the pinnacle of white supremacy, right? But our oppressor had a problem. His problem were the people that he considered subhuman. There was an issue where these people weren't necessarily the divide of the country, but they were the ones that fueled this place. And as the states and these colonies started to butt heads, now we had to discuss the slave issue, because as the Confederacy was being fueled by the propagation of slavery, the Union was looking at the power and the economical position that that the Confederacy was at, and it became a threat and a problem to what they call homeland, to the homeland, right? But yeah, let's keep reading. So the U.S. flag was definitely a symbol of oppression and terrorism. Most black people, they know. Listen, there's nothing that's changed since the 1600s in this place, right? Slaves were always excited about our oppressors' holidays because it was a time where they could get a day off, right? As our oppressor was getting merry and he was bombarding his and parading his independence, we were just as happy as massa, because this was a day off for us. This was a day that we can fall back from our servitude and cook and barbecue and have a day off. Well, in 2020, it's the same way. We're excited about the 4th of July because we get to get a day off. we get to barbecue and relieve ourselves from our slavery, right? Our modern day slavery, right? Now, keep in mind, I'm up in Boston, right? And understand this. I remember I said this a while ago, and I'm gonna stick with this. I said this. I said Massachusetts is the most racist state in the country, right? And some people will be like, I'm not sure about that. But I really think it is, right? This is where it all started, right? In Massachusetts, right? The spirit of this place, of America, is here in Massachusetts, right? What is the... Hold on. Let me pull up something real quick, right? Okay. So now, when you look at a license plate of a driver in Massachusetts, right? For those that are not familiar, for those that are outside of, Plymouth Rock, for those that are outside of this place, what you'll see on that license plate in Massachusetts, right, is you'll see a little label that says the Spirit of America, right? Now, let me not go any further from what I'm saying, but I've always attested that Massachusetts is the most racist state in the country. I've always said that, right? But, it's not something that I can prove because I've never been in everywhere else. I've been to quite a few states, but I haven't been everywhere else. But I say that because on our license plate it says the Spirit of America, right? When you go to New Hampshire, which is right next door, what is their motto? Live or die trying, right? Understand that the bedrock of America is in New England. This is the bedrock of America, right? But let's go. Let's keep reading. I just wanted to pull that up real quick. Now, the Star-Spangled Banner, right? Written by Francis Scott Keys. The Star-Spangled Banner is unknowingly the most racist song of independence. You got to remember at this time, right? As America is fighting their oppressor, the British had their propaganda going on as well. And what they were trying to do was they were trying to entice the slaves to join the British Army, right? It's the same thing that they were doing in Vietnam, right? Where they would play on a loudspeaker propaganda to get the black soldiers to denounce the country that they were fighting for. And you know what? They were absolutely right about that propaganda, because you're out in the middle of, in a foreign country, fighting for a nation that is continuously oppressing you, so that when you come back, you're coming back to that nigger treatment again. You're coming back to physical harm, racism. You're coming back to oppression. And this is the country that you're fighting for. So the Vietnamese knew that our people were heavily oppressed in our own country. So they would play on a loudspeaker certain propagandas to school us. It's sad to say, but to school us on the oppression that we have endured in America. Well, likewise, the British were doing the same thing in their recruiting process to get black people and so-called Native Indian people. Keep in mind, the French and Indian Wars was something that was going on prior. So now a lot of those Native Indians decided to go on the side of the British. And so this devil by the name of Francis Scott Keyes, he wrote the most racist lyrics, which is the Star-Spangled Banner, which is something that they make you sing in every ball game, in every football game, baseball game. No matter what it is, everyone stands up for the Star-Spangled Banner. Or everyone stands up for the national anthem, right? And as you are standing up for the national anthem, what you're doing is you're showing your allegiance, right? So, like I said earlier, all this marching, protesting, Black Lives Matter, all that can be in vain when you are actually making a covenant with your oppressor on the 4th of July. That's what you're doing. You agree with his independence. You agree with white supremacy. It's sad, but it's true. Right? All right, let's keep going. We're not going to read the lyrics on that, right? But here's what we're going to do. Now, the fireworks, that's a whole nother. The fireworks, right? And you slapping that pork rib on the grill is like you sacrificing onto an altar, right? Let's go to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 18. This is a good one right here, right? Pay attention to this one. Salaki, bear with me, all right? Let me just get this real quick. 1 Corinthians chapter 10. We're going to start at verse... let's start at verse 16. At verse 18, Salaki. 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 18. Here's what it says. Behold, Israel after the flesh, right? So when it says Israel after the flesh, it's talking about Israelites that this, a lot of brothers in the world don't understand who they are. They don't know who they are, right? And so as we're out there, we're telling you that you are Israelites. Your seed comes from Jacob, who was later named Israel, right? And this is your lineage. This is your bloodline. You come from Jacob, right? So this is what it's saying. Behold, Israel after the flesh. I had a brother call me up the other day. He's like, yeah, he called me up. He was interested in class, and he was like, yeah, I want to, how do I get an Israelite woman? How do I marry an Israelite woman? And I said, well, you see, here's what I said. I said, well, every day you see Israelite women. You come across black, so-called Negroes, so-called black women, so-called Hispanic women, so-called Native Indian women all the time, right? But this is Israel after the flesh, right? There was a time in our history where if you did certain things, you were considered a heathen, right? You were an Israelite, but you were considered a heathen. There was a time before I came into the school, I was considered a Gentile because the customs that I were familiar with and the culture that I put on was the culture of heathens, was a Gentile culture. But then it says this in 1 Corinthians 10 and 18. Behold, Israel after the flesh. It's talking about Israelites that don't keep the laws, statutes, commandments of the Most High. but they're Israelites. But today, what do they call themselves? They don't call themselves Israelites. You know what they call themselves? They call themselves Haitians. They call themselves Dominicans, Puerto Ricans, right? Cubans, Mexicans, so-called African American. They call themselves Native Indians, right? These are the people that are Israel after the flesh. Let's keep reading. Are not they which eat of the sacrifices partakers of the altar? Let me explain what that means. When you have your Thanksgiving dinner or your Christmas dinner, or you slap that pork rib on that grill on 4th of July, you are they that eat of the sacrifices of idols. There's a level of witchcraft that's going on while you're sparking up that grill on 4th of July. While you can't wait to have that, Thanksgiving meal, right? It says this, are not they which eat of the sacrifices partakers of the altar? Meaning this, there's nothing wrong with the turkey that you're eating on Thanksgiving dinner. There's nothing wrong with the turkey or the honey ham that you eat on Thanksgiving. There's nothing wrong with the actual meat that you're eating. But what you're doing, because you're doing it on that day, because of the symbolism of doing it on that day, makes you a partaker of the altar, right? It's showing that you are eating the sacrifices onto a god. Now, this god that you're eating the sacrifices onto and being partakers of that altar, he's not a real God, right? There's only one power, and that's the Most High. But what you're doing is that you are eating of the sacrifices. This is witchcraft on a whole nother level. Now, why would you partake partake in this when you know, or you should know, that the reason why you're celebrating Thanksgiving, in your mind, the excuse is that it's family coming together. But you celebrating Thanksgiving is you celebrating the massacre and the genocide of your people, our so-called, I want to say that, I want to be specific, our so-called Native Indian brothers, right? But you want everyone to take plight for your justice, right? No justice, no peace. But you're willing to celebrate the massacre of our Native Indian brothers on Thanksgiving. But then when a white man says white lives matter too, you get mad. You are in an outrage. Here's your problem, is that the protesting and the movements that you're a part of shows your hypocrisy, because this, in spite of the oppression that's going on with black people, you have not considered the compression or the oppression that's gone on with our so-called Native Indian brothers. That's why when Thanksgiving comes around, you are now out in them streets marching and protesting and talking about no justice, no peace. I can't breathe. Well, the Native Indians, they couldn't breathe either, right? Because the white man gave them blankets of smallpox. The white man destroyed all their source of food, right? But I can guarantee you, in November, you will be sitting down and you will be celebratory during Thanksgiving, considering you celebrating genocide and you celebrating mass murdering. Come on, man. You got to be real with yourself. You got to just let yourself know, man, you a hypocrite, man. You a hypocrite. When you celebrate American holidays, which clearly shows the injustice of our people, whether it's 4th of July, whether it's Thanksgiving, whether it's Christmas. You know the Romans killed Christ, right? But you celebrate Christmas, though, which is a Roman holiday. You don't know it's a Roman holiday because what? They masked it under Christianity, right? They threw that Christ in there. Christ Mass, right? You don't know it's a Roman holiday. I'm going to school you on something, man. Cut it out. That's all I'm going to say. Cut it out. You can't say you stand up for anything that has to do with the black plight in America. If you are going to be out there this Saturday sparking up that grill, you are a goddamn liar. But now let's get to one more thing. Right? Let's keep reading, actually. For not they which eat of the sacrifice, she said, behold, Israel after the flesh, are not they which eat of the sacrifices partakers of the altar? You are in covenant. You are in agreement with our oppressor, killing our black men in the streets, our black women in the streets. You are in agreement. You are a partaker of the altar. That's all. Right? Let's keep reading. Verse 19. What say I then? That the idol is anything, or that which is offered in sacrifice to idols is anything? Meaning what Paul was saying, he's asking the question, he's saying, I'm not talking about the food that you're eating. The food that you're eating is not the problem. But the fact that you're eating it on 4th of July, on Thanksgiving, that's the problem. Because you're sacrificing that onto idols. And it's witchcraft. It's you worshiping Satan. And here's another thing of you worshiping Satan. Right? Let me just read one more. It says this. But I say these things which the Gentiles sacrifice. And this is what the Gentiles is our oppressor. These other nations. They sacrifice. It's okay for them to go and spark up the grill and put that shrimp in that pork, the ribs on the thing. That's okay for them, because this is what the Gentiles sacrifice, right? They sacrifice unto devils. And when you join and partake in their sacrifice, you, my friend, are sacrificing unto devils. This is in 1 Corinthians 10 and 20. For all you Christians that are going to be celebrating 4th of July this year, understand what 1 Corinthians 10 and 20 says, right? And not to God. Y'all, listen, Christians do not worship the Most High. They worship Satan. That's what Christians worship, right? And I would not that you should have fellowship with devils. And this is what you're doing. You are having fellowship with devils. You got a white friend. You got your wife is white. There's a problem right there. You know why? The Lord did not want you to have interracial marriage, because you marrying that white woman is you sacrificing onto devils when you do 4th of July, which is your white woman's holiday, Christmas, which is your white woman's holiday, Thanksgiving, that's another. Listen, let me tell you something, right? Thanksgiving and 4th of July are two holidays where the white man is celebrating the defeat of his enemies. Now, on his stance, there's nothing wrong with that. Who would not want to celebrate the defeat of their enemies? This is what we do during the Passover. We celebrate the defeat of our enemies, right? Which is absolutely righteous. And here's what the white man does. He celebrates the defeat of his enemies. And the reason why it's not absolutely righteous is because his enemies are the Lord's chosen people, which is you, black man, which is you Hispanic man, which is you so-called Native Indian man, right? But yeah, let's it says this last one, it says, ye cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. You can't be a switch-sided kind of nigga. You can't have one foot in the world and one foot in this truth. You can't say, I'm going to celebrate the Passover and celebrate 4th of July. You can't do that. You cannot drink the cup of the Lord and the cup of devils. You can't do that. You know what I mean? You can't say I'm going to celebrate Christmas, but then I'm going to celebrate the Lord's high holy days. You can't do that. Right? You cannot be partakers of the Lord's table and of the table of devils. You can't do that. You can't celebrate 4th of July and then say, you know, we need justice. It's black and then protest black injustice. You can't do that. You can't. It doesn't work. Right? If you're in a war, right, you can't be a part of both sides of the war. Either it's some either you are espionage, it's on some espionage thing, or you know, or whatever. But you can't be part. You can't show allegiance to both sides. You're gonna betray one side or the other. That's just how it works, right? But so fireworks, right? Let's do one last thing. Fireworks. Why is fireworks not something that you should be doing, right? Fireworks has been a Chinese superstition, right? I'm going to read what fireworks is, right? Let's go back. Let's get to it. It says this. The earliest fireworks came from China during the Song Dynasty. Fireworks were used to accompany many festivities. The art and science of firework making has developed into an independent profession. In China, pyrotechnicians were respected for their knowledge of complex techniques in mounting fireworks display. Chinese people originally believed, now pay attention to when you and your sons and your children are lighting up them fireworks and you're so amazed by the spectacles of fireworks. Let's get to the bottom of this, right? Where fireworks come from. It says this. Chinese people originally believed that fireworks could expel evil spirits and bring out luck and happiness. Fireworks is something that's of witchcraft. It's very superstitious. Let's keep reading. During the Han Dynasty, 202 BC to 2020 AD, people threw bamboo stems into a fire to produce an explosion with a loud sound. What the Chinese were doing was they were trying to get rid of these demons or these devils, right? And so the way they thought of doing it was by producing an explosion with a loud sound. And the louder the sound was, the more it would drive away this foreign entity, these demons, right? In later times, gunpowder packed in small containers was used to mimic the sounds of burning bamboo. These exploding bamboo stems and gunpowder firecrackers were interchangeable, known as baozu. By the 12th and possibly 11th century, the term baozang was used specifically referred to gunpowder firecrackers. This is where this all came from. And this is witchcraft, it's superstition. Whenever you lighting up fireworks, what you're saying is that you're trying to drive out devils and demons and evil spirits. That's you doing that, right? Which is idol worship, which is superstition, which is witchcraft. Let's keep reading. During the Song Dynasty, many of the common people could purchase various kinds of fireworks from market vendors, which is what we do today. We go around trying to find all the best firework to purchase, right? Grand displays of fireworks were also known to be held. A large fireworks display in a martial demonstration was held to entertain Emperor Huzong of Song in his court. So now we know where fireworks came from. This is a Chinese superstition custom, and it was used to drive away the enemy, right? Drive away evil spirits. That's what fireworks is all about. Let me give you one more before we close out. Let's go to Amos chapter 3, verse 6. All right? It says this. Actually, let's go to Amos, Salakia. Last one. Let's go to Amos chapter 5, verse 21, Salakia. Here's what the Lord says, right? Just to close off. The Lord says this. Amos chapter 5, verse 21. I despise your feast days, and I will not smell in your solemn assemblies. The Lord hates your feast days. The Lord hates the fact that you're about to go celebrate 4th of July to commemorate the independence of your oppressor. When last week, I don't believe your oppressor was celebrating Juneteenth. I don't think he was. Despite him trying to make it a federal holiday, I'm not seeing too many white people celebrating Juneteenth. When next year rolls around, if Juneteenth is a federal holiday, I gotta look in every white man's backyard to see if they're lighting up a grill and if they're as celebratory as you are when his Independence Day rolls around. And this is why the Lord hates your feast days, because this is not something that he sanctioned. These 4th of July, Thanksgiving, Christmas is not feast days that he sanctioned. That's why he said he cannot smell in your solemn assemblies. As you are dressed up next week in your red, white, and blue and your stars, right? He cannot smell in your solemn assemblies. When you burning that pork fat, that pork fat on that grill, the Lord is angry and is kindled. And guess what? Here's the worst part. Because we're partakers of sacrifices unto devils, many of our people will be killed on that day because of that. The Lord is angered, and he said he will utterly destroy us because of that. And with that, we're going to class. It's 8:53. Keep in mind, I've seen a lot of brothers and sisters out there marching and protesting for the injustice of black people and Hispanic people. But it's all null and void when 4th of July comes around and you are celebratory for your oppressor's Independence Day. It's all in vain at that point, right? As you're marching and you're protesting, but then again, on the flip side, you're willing to celebrate your oppressor's Independence Day. As you're taking down statues of Confederate statues and all kinds of things that relate to racism, you are still going to be lighting up a grill on the 4th of July. Why don't we kill, instead of taking down statues and doing all this crazy nonsense out there, why don't we not celebrate 4th of July? Let's see if that works. I can guarantee you it'll work. I can guarantee you that this place would crumble once we stop following the rudiments of our oppressor. And with that, we're the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge, started out at 1 West 125th Street, Harlem, New York. We have class tomorrow online. Check us tomorrow on Facebook, YouTube, and any other website syndicate that we're on. ISUPK Boston and YouTube Boston No Cowards. We have Brotherhood class tomorrow. So tune in tomorrow for that class. And with that, we're going to class. Love y'all, Israel. Keep away from them. Keep away from the devil's holiday. Shalom.